greeted MRT passengers on the first day of GCQ as the management is keeping only around 10% of its regular capacity due to social distancing measures. JC Cosico with the details.
Train lines have finally resumed operations as Metro Manila shifts to general community quarantine. And as expected, long lines greeted commuters at the MRT-3 Taft Avenue station in Pasay City on Monday morning. Before the quarantine, a train set can carry over 1,000 passengers. But under the GCQ, passenger ridership is kept to just 153 passengers, a mere 13% of its original capacity, to maintain physical distancing.
Ang isa sa guidelines po ng IATF natin sa DOH is the social distancing. So, in-implement po namin yan mula dun sa pilahan sa baba hanggang sa taas hanggang sa platform. Ngayon, dun naman sa loob ng train, ilagay din namin ng social distancing na 1 meter para po hindi po tayo magkaroon ng spread ng coronavirus.
Signages and markers are placed in areas leading to the ticket booths, waiting platforms, and inside the trains to maintain the 1-meter distance between passengers. Footbaths are also present at the entry and exit points. Passengers are required to wear face masks. Temperatures are also taken before they're allowed into the station. With MRT-3's limited operations, some passengers had no choice but to endure the long wait, just like Eliza Ataban, who works as a restaurant server in Makati.
Hindi pa ito hassle para sa inyo?
Ay, medyo po, pero kakayanin na lang po. Kasi po, no choice. Lagi pong long sleeve para no touch. Tapos lagi po, pag may nahawakan, alcohol and sanitizer. Tapos po, vitamins, every umalis ng bahay. And then po, kapag nag-duty po, naka-hand gloves naman po kami.
Some passengers queued for more than 40 minutes before they were able to ride the train. The MRT-3 management has increased the number of operational trains from 15 sets pre-ECQ to 20. The roster includes the 3 Dalian trains. Rail replacement conducted during the ECQ and MECQ period are paying dividends. Train speed has improved in some sections, shortening waiting time.
Continuous po kasi ang maintenance program ng ating mga bagon, And for so many weeks po na hindi tayo tumatakbo, meron po tayong mga tinatawag namin down trains, yung hindi po pumapasok sa linya, na maintain ng maayos at pumasa sa aming safety and security testing. Yung mga areas po na dati ay nasa 30 kph, pwede na po namin increase sa 40 kph. Ang area po niyan ay Bendia to Taft, both sides po yan, northbound and southbound, saka po yung North Avenue to Santolan. Ibig sabihin bababa ang headway natin. Headway meaning yung pag-antay. Dati natin nasa 9.5 minutes tayo. Ngayon po bumaba tayo sa 6 minutes.
Some passengers, meanwhile, opted to ride augmentation buses the government has provided to aid MRT's limited train operations.
Pero sinubukan niyo sumakay po ng MRT kanina?
Hindi na po kasi mahaba po pila eh. Dadala po ng sanitizer, alcohol, face mask, yun lang po. Talaga po gano'n, ipagkatsaga na lang po.
90 buses were deployed for the program. They were allowed to pick up and drop off passengers at 4 stations: Taft Avenue Station, Ayala Station, Quezon Avenue, and North Avenue Station. For now, the MRT management says they will study the possibility of adding more pick-up and drop-off points for these buses under GCQ. MRT authorities are also urging the public to stay at home unless they have work or important businesses to attend to.
Planungin po nila ng maayos ang kanilang mga lakad at the same time, doon po sa mga hindi naman talaga kailangan lumabas, lalo na yung mga 0 to 20 years old, senior citizen, pregnant women, ay mas makakabuti po na mag-stay home na lang sila at para naman po hindi na tayo dumami ang mga mananakay natin na magiging problema lang natin later on.
For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
Quite a lot of commuters were seen stranded along major thoroughfares on the first day of GCQ. Their struggle getting to work with a limited public transportation. Laila Pangilinan tells us more.
Hundreds of passengers returning to work waited hours for a ride along EDSA and Commonwealth Avenue as GCQ begins in Metro Manila. Among them is Buddy Mirandilla. He said his company has yet to provide shuttle services.
Alas 6 pa ako nag-aantay. Sasakyan, ang hirap. So, makabang, walang masakyan. Talaga nakakapanibago yung ating sitwasyon. Ang dami nang nagiinit ang ulo.
Due to limited public transportation, military trucks were deployed to provide free rides for stranded commuters. The Philippine National Police also gave assistance. But because of desperation, there were times when physical distancing was thrown out of the window. Other commuters who didn't want to join the mad dash chose to ride their bicycles despite the absence of protective gear.
Hindi ko na nga alam ang pamasahe ngayon, ang minimum hindi ko na alam. Ito na rin ang ma'am, parang exercise ko na to. Sa edad ko ito, 57 na ako, pero sa awa ng Diyos, matagal ako mapagod.
Duel Talicer, on the other hand, has been biking to work for the last 15 years and always makes sure that he wears a face mask for protection against pollution and the virus. Same goes for Jessica, who works in a mall. She said their management handed out protective gears before going back to work.
Okay naman po, wala namang problema. Saka naman kami, supportado naman kasi may face shield saka may face mask.
Nelson, on the other hand, is having a tough start. He said there aren't enough tricycles on the road.
Mukhang malilate. Ang haba ng pila sa tricycle. Tapos isa-isa lang talaga sa tricycle. Sa isang biyahe, isang tao lang ang laman.
For tricycles, the downgraded quarantine is also a challenge.
Lugi po talaga. Kaya lang, wala naman po tayo magagawa kasi ito lang naman hanap buhay. Wala ibang pagkakakitaan.
The Transportation Department said public transpo will resume in 2 phases under GCQ. The first phase, from June 1 to 21, will allow the operation of permitted train and bus augmentation units, taxis, ride-hailing cars, point-to-point buses, shuttle services, and bicycles, all at limited capacity. The second phase, from June 22 to 30, will allow public utility buses, modern jeepneys, and UV express vans. For News 5, Laila Pangilinan. We are One News.
The Interagency Task Force admits that it faced a huge challenge with stranded passengers, especially along Commonwealth Avenue earlier today. Because of the lack of public transport serving Quezon City's major thoroughfare, the armed forces needed to send out trucks and buses to pick up commuters and bring them to EDSA. The government's anti-COVID efforts chief implementer Carlito Galvez said they're already discussing these concerns with the MMDA. Interior Secretary Ed Año appeals to the public for understanding as the government will bring back public transport in phases to avoid a surge of COVID-19 cases. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque announced the list of areas under GCQ from today to June 15 as prescribed by the IATF. In Luzon, areas under GCQ include Pangasinan, Cagayan Valley, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, and the National Capital Region, including Pateros. In Visayas, the lone region under GCQ is Region 7 or Central Visayas. And in Mindanao, only 2 cities are under GCQ, and those are Zamboanga and Davao City. The rest of the country are meanwhile placed under Modified General Community Quarantine until June 15. COVID-19 cases in the Philippines continue to climb. As of today, the Health Department tallied 552 more coronavirus infections. 100 are fresh cases, while at least 400 were reported late. So far, there are at least 18,600 COVID-19 cases in the country. 3 people died in the past 24 hours, which raises the country's death count to 960. 70 people recovered from the disease overnight. Currently, almost 4,000 patients have survived the SARS-like disease. We'll pause for a short break, but up next, the DTI inspects salons and barber shops that are raring to start accepting customers soon. And human rights groups are sounding alarm bells over President Duterte's decision to certify as urgent the anti-terrorism bill. I'm Jess De Los Santos and you're watching The Big Story. For those looking to get a fresh pedicure or hair rebond, you will have to wait some more. The DTI reminds the public that salons and barbershops are only allowed to offer haircut services for now. Marian Henriquez has the report.
The DTI started inspecting community-based salons and barbershops in Quezon City as the metro transitioned to a more relaxed community quarantine. First stop, this salon chain, which has over 100 other branches nationwide. Standard health protocols such as disinfection and regular temperature checks are observed. Customers are required to wear face masks, but if they forget to bring any, they can buy one right at the salon. Clients are likewise asked to fill out information sheets for contact tracing purposes. Social distancing is also being observed. Cutting capes go straight to brown bags for laundry after use. Tools are washed right away and then disinfected under a UV light. Since only 30% of capacity is allowed for its June 7 reopening, management has cut operating hours to just 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. This is one full shift, less than their previous 22-hour operations. Despite these changes, management decided to keep haircuts at its regular price of 150 pesos.
Ang income namin siguro mga 50% na lang. It's better than nothing. At saka at the same time, nakakapag-serve kami sa community.
Second stop is this barber shop. It's also implementing standard health protocols being enforced on the previous salon. Stylists don protective gear during the procedure. However, in this shop, a standard haircut costs 500 pesos for first-timers. Less than half of the charge goes to the barber's cape, which customers can take home. The next time they get a haircut, they'll only pay the regular rate of 300 pesos if they bring the garment with them. This salon, meanwhile, has put up plastic dividers between chairs to ensure the safety of both the clients and stylists. They also use disposable plastic capes and eye shields for customers. Previously, they could serve as many as 6 clients at a time, but because of the current situation, they're capping that number to 3. They're also looking at increasing their rates by an additional 10 to 20% to cover the cost of protective gear and disinfectants. Trade Undersecretary Ruth Castello said the government cannot control the prices of services being offered by salons and barbershops, but they are appealing to business owners and consumers to find a middle ground.
Hindi naman controlled kasi talaga ang presyo niyan, but we of course also appeal to both consumer and business. Sa panahon ngayon, kailangan natin magbayanihan. So kung magtaas man ng bahagya yung mga establishments na ganito, pagbigyan na rin natin. Pero hindi rin naman yung sobra-sobrang taas na alam natin kung gaano kalayo na from the previous price.
The DTI reminds the public that only haircut services are being allowed. Hair rebonding and coloring are prohibited, so do manicures and pedicures. Meanwhile, in this mall in Quezon City, at least half of the approved shops are open. The mall admin noticed that people have become very disciplined and are now compliant with protocols of social distancing.
Siguro dahil sa gradual na pag-open natin from MECQ to GCQ, mas alam na ho nila yung mga linya naming yung mga one-way namin na dinadaanan, na kailangan daanan. Yung safety protocol officer namin, halos wala siyang sinasaway ngayon kasi ang mga tao, kabisado na nila kung saan sila pupunta, saan yung one-way, saan yung at least yung dadaanan nilang tama.
Viandre is confident that customers will still follow public health protocols, even if more people will go to malls when salons and barbershops open. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Commuters struggle to get to their destinations with public transportation limited to just a few options. But despite fewer vehicles on the road, parts of EDSA was still plagued with traffic. Gerard de la Peña has the rest of the story.
Traffic crawled along EDSA on the first day of general community quarantine in Metro Manila. Vehicles crept from Estrella to Camuning on the northbound lane, as well as from Cubao down to Ortigas on the southbound lane. Authorities closed the 2 inner lanes which are meant for buses. Out of habit, private vehicles avoided the yellow lanes which were designated for the exclusive use of city buses before the capital was placed under an enhanced community quarantine. But the plan to use MRT stations as bus stops did not push through. The Transportation Department and the MMDA said they need to iron out a few kinks before rolling this out.
We downloaded almost 33 million sa MMDA para sila yung gumawa nitong mga bus stops na to, nasa ilalim ng mga MRT3 station. So, ongoing, ginagawa pa po yan ng MMDA.
And despite clamor for bike lanes, bikers were instead told to avoid EDSA and wait for the long-term plan for the construction of the right infrastructure. The DOTR's bus augmentation program along EDSA surprisingly moved even without passengers, which is ironic considering that many passengers were stranded in other parts of the metro due to the absence of public transport. TNVS and taxis were allowed to get back to operations starting today, but only those with special permits from the LTFRB.
Yun talaga kasi sumusunod tayo sa batas kasi pag lumabas kami, huli kami ng mga high patrol, 5,000 ang multasan namin. Kaya sumusunod lang tayo sa batas.
Talking to One News earlier today, Grab said around 4,000 Grab cars and taxis have been deployed around the metro, but commuters should expect more units in the coming days.
With the taxi service, there's, I believe, around 2,000 units available. And then with the Grab car service, also a similar number. But we are currently ongoing, we have currently trainings ongoing and disinfectant and safety barrier distribution for the remaining 16,000 other TNVS operators that were allowed by the LTFRB to begin operation.
But the MMDA and the DOTR said they are now looking at opening new routes, particularly along Commonwealth Avenue as well as between Cavite and Metro Manila.
Later on, ang LTFRB, tinitingnan din nila yung possibility of opening some other routes. No? Unti-unti, gradual, may transition tayo dahil ayaw natin na biglang buksan yung grapo na yan. Ano? Ang tendency ng Pilipino kasi kapag binuksan mo yung grapo, lahat yan maglalabasan.
Number coding in Metro Manila is suspended until such time that the Metro Manila Council is able to publish its reimposition in newspapers of general circulation. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
These are the other big stories today. President Rodrigo Duterte has certified as urgent the anti-terrorism bill, allowing Congress to fast-track its approval. In a letter sent to House Speaker Alan Cayetano, Duterte said the bill will address the urgent need to contain the menace of terrorists. Among others, it seeks to extend the number of days suspected terrorists can be detained without a warrant of arrest. Rights groups have warned that the bill's enactment would worsen the human rights situation in the Philippines. The Archdiocese of Manila is proposing a set of guidelines for religious activities under the general community quarantine. Apostolic Administrator of the Archdiocese of Manila, Bishop Broderick Pabilio, said those who are not yet allowed to go out should stay home and attend services online instead. These include Catholics who are 20 years old and below and 60 years old and above. Those who serve in the church should also refrain from service if they are not feeling well. Parish and church organizations have to plan their activities and programs and to open services in a safe manner. Each parish must also create a Ministry of Health to assist old people and those who are sick. An archdiocesan guideline is meanwhile given to help church leaders to decide whether or not a member should be tested for COVID-19. Currently, only 10 persons are allowed to go to church buildings at a time under the GCQ. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Stay with us here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos and you're watching The Big Story. Senators have started to discuss the proposed extension of the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. The measure, which aims to extend the powers granted to the President to carry out COVID-19 response efforts, was passed by Congress in March. Mean Los Baños has the details.
Senate Finance Committee Chairman Sonny Angara sponsored the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act, which seeks to extend the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act until September 30 this year. Under the measure, President Duterte will retain his power to realign the budget of various government agencies for COVID-19 response efforts. But Angara allayed fears that this might give the chief executive too much power.
Strike out all the provisions which might be interpreted as being emergency in character. Thus, you will see that in the Bayanihan 2, there is no longer the provision which allows the President to take over the utilities or hospitals.
The senator also proposed another batch of social amelioration for the poorest of the poor, giving priority to those who have not received any financial aid since the lockdown began. The measure also champions wage subsidies to freelancers, self-employed individuals, repatriated OFWs, and those working in sectors like tourism, construction, film, and creatives, which are hardest hit by the quarantine restrictions.
This measure grants to the President the necessary flexibility to realign budgets from the different agencies and direct these funds towards the country's COVID-19 response. There are also still the emergency subsidies for low-income households, especially the ones that did not receive any assistance in previous months.
Other senators added provisions for cash assistance to part-time teachers and tuition grants to students whose parents lost their jobs during the pandemic. They also want loan subsidies for students who need to buy laptops, tablets, or smartphones for their online classes when school reopens in August.
Land Bank of the Philippines, the Development Bank of the Philippines, the Social Security System, and the Government Service Insurance System, or GSIS, will also provide loans, subsidies, discounts, or even grants for purchasing necessary gadgets like laptops, tablets, and smartphones, given the expected shift to blended learning. These same government financial institutions, or GFIs, will also come up with similar loan programs to schools and universities for transitioning to online modes of teaching.
Senators also agreed to take out a provision that gives the chief executive the power to take over hospitals and private establishments. To fund all of these, the proposed law sets aside a 236 billion peso standby fund for programs addressing the impact of COVID-19. Senate President Pro Tempore Ralph Recto backs the extension of the law. He said the crisis has bled the economy and has killed jobs.
In our bid to flatten the curve, the needles of our economy moved to alarming lows. 2.79 million workers lost their income, putting them overnight into welfare. 103,000 firms shattered, most temporarily, but many for good. The quarantine cost our economy 18 billion pesos a day.
Legislators are expecting President Duterte to certify this bill as urgent as soon as they transmit a copy of the committee report to the palace. This will allow the chamber to pass the measure this week before they go on session break starting next week. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
Media giant ABS-CBN responds to the Office of the Solicitor General's accusations that the network has been deceiving Filipinos. During the congressional inquiry earlier today, Solgen Calida told lawmakers that ABS-CBN is motivated not by service, but by greed and a desire for power and influence. Calida added that the Lopez-led firm has committed too many violations that went unnoticed and unpunished. In defense, Kapamilya President and CEO Carlo Katigbak said many voices will attest to ABS-CBN's public service efforts. Katigbak also debunked allegations concerning the citizenship of its chairman emeritus, Eugenio Lopez III, and the supposed unlawful return of the company to the Lopezes, among others. According to Katigbak, the Lopez family rightfully reclaimed the company in 1986. He also clarified that ABS-CBN chairman Gabi Lopez is a Filipino citizen, having been born to Filipino parents. The Solgen also fired back at actor Coco Martin during the hearing. Calida was seemingly irked, recounting how the Ang Provinciano lead star blamed him and the National Telecommunications Commission over the Kapamilya network shutdown.
He feels
that he can solve their problems the same way as he solves them on screen with much of bluster and bravado. Allegedly, he has apologized for his tantrum. If I had not been the Solicitor General, I would have called his bluff and made him eat his words.
Kalida also hit other celebrities criticizing the Duterte administration with ABS-CBN's closure.
Stars and celebrities have taken to social media to rail against what they perceive to be oppression on the part of the government. In desperation, they would want to use their influence over the multitudes of fans to muddle the issue and drum up support for their network.
And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News. Good evening.